Okay,
And
we're ready?
Then pledge allegiance.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order for Committee of a Whole for October 15th, 5 p.m. And if we stand and recite the pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Mayor Johnson is running late, and so is Councilmember Berkeley. They should be here shortly. So, committee meeting items, police department update.
All right, we get to the third quarter statistics, numbers that we have. Overall, looking back over last quarter, we're slightly up as well as calls for service. Nothing dramatic. Our priorities right now, as far as our complaint-driven priorities, are speed enforcement, particularly in the school zones. So we're addressing some of that with our staffing. So that's kind of what we're getting as far as the biggest complaints that we're getting is the neighborhood speed in general, but school issues as well. As far as staffing, the police department, we have Lieutenant McCarty on board now, which has helped immensely. There's a lot of projects we had trying to get accomplished, and he's working on a lot of those and getting those knocked out. Some of those things are reorganizing as far as getting more efficient on our case management. So he had gone through the last 2 years of caseload and made sure that we're caught up to where we should be as far as our case management. Case management meaning that if calls for service come in, if there's other tasks that need to be assigned, that we can monitor that some way. If you think we handle 10,000 calls for service a year, we need some way of maintaining that through our record system. We've also tested with some inventory pieces, trying to figure out what we need for equipment stuff. You just did an ammo inventory, some firearms inventory and stuff like that. So we're starting to get caught up on some of that staffing. We did some interviews for full-time officer. We have a new full-time officer, Joe Vogel, starting this Wednesday evening, starting his FTO process. We did some interviews, and with Officer Vogel, we're 2 full-time officers short still. So again, that's a goal we're trying to accomplish, but the field training and the logistics to get there is still somewhat challenging. Many of you have seen we have a new paint scheme on our police department, so that was done. Our police department has been painted, along with the fire department.
Looks great.
Looks better than it did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it
By
was
far.
amazing. When they were power washing that, if you saw it in that interim after they power washed it, half the paint flaked off. It was,
It looks like $1 million now.
yeah, it does look a lot better.
Unfortunately, I only see it when it's dark out.
Well, there are red doors for the fire department.
It does look good.
We didn't get a blue door, but they got it.
Yeah.
So it does look really good. It looks, you can't see the old city hall up there anymore. Before you could see where the outline of city hall
Yeah.
was up there.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah,
good.
kind of interesting. So appreciate that. Makes us look like we're modernized anyway. We rolled out that body cam, which the council approved early on. By the time the process goes through, it's a big project to get out. I mean, we have policy issues as far as getting those through. Logistics, the networking piece, that has been rolled out probably for close to a month now, and very user-friendly. I mean, the user input on that system is very minimal, and the officers just punch in the case number, and the system does the rest. They don't need to upload, download, or anything else, and so that'll be very beneficial for us. And it creates a more modernized police department, more responsibility for the citizens and everybody as well. I think other than that, we just got that one more piece on the agenda today, which was another one of the goals that I had coming in here, as far as the mission statement, stuff like that. So we can talk about that later.
Did you get a chance to look into pricing at all? I know you weren't asked to, but on the
Speed signs?
radars, speed signs?
I did reach out to several vendors. You're talking 25 to 3,000 is what we're looking at.
Okay.
Yep, so I did reach out, and the technology, and Jason could appreciate that technology because he's the one that kind of educated me a little bit on some of the statistics that it captures, the 85 percentile and stuff like that. So they have that. They're Wi-Fi enabled, so we can drive by, actually download those signs as we drive by. And the battery life is up to 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I think I did mention that we'll look at Mike and see if that's feasible for us yet this year. Because again, one of our biggest complaints that we have and one of our focuses is the speed issues.
Right.
You know, it's a deterrent factor for one, you know, when people see it, but it's also a nice data collection piece. You know, when we did the speed survey with our officers, you know, we're sending an officer there for a half hour. We're only getting half-hour snapshots. You know, if we had maybe 12 of them, well, that's 6 hours of officers, which is good, but you're going to get a lot more data driven from something like that. So you have data as well as the deterrent factor.
What do you need from us? What does he need from us to go ahead and, so we can put that on like council approval, consent agenda or something to purchase?
Part.
Did you have funds for that this year, or it would be something that we could include in the budgeting for next year?
And I can reach out to Mike, and I briefly mentioned it to Mike. I haven't actually asked him if we have that still this year, and if it is, I can check with Mike and go forward this year, otherwise next year.
Okay.
I think that's the first step. I think we need to look
Yeah.
forward to see what Mike says for right now, otherwise we'll have to try to budget it in, see if there's other funds available that you know, but yeah, it would be.
Sounds
budget
pretty
here and
reasonable price though.
budget there,
Right.
so.
You said 2,500 to $3,000 somewhere
Yep,
around there.
25 to 3,000.
If worst case scenario, we do need to include it in the budget, then he'd be able to get it right away in January. So it's not too
Yeah.
far away already.
No. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Whiskey Road sidewalk updates.
Councilmember Lindy, we're going to skip that one because Mayor Johnson's going to speak on that one, so we'll go to number 3, please.
All right, draft logo ordinance.
Ms. Wishy.
Thank you. That's my item.
That's you.
That's me. In 2017, the city adopted a city logo use policy for the Parks Department and the city logo. And you'll see in your packet, we have 2 of them. One of them has the Community for Generations with the word Isanti underneath it. That's the one that we use on everything. But we also had the Isanti without the Community for Generations on the top without the tagline. So we have filed for registration for that. And what we need to do now is adopt an actual ordinance regarding our logo so that people can't just use it as they want. We do have a policy in place. They do have to apply and register. And then having the ordinance actually lets us enforce that. So as you know, like, for example, right now there's currently a Facebook page that uses the Isanti logo without the slogan. So once we have that registered and we adopt this ordinance, we can enforce them to take that down.
What if someone wants to, good example, local car club in town wants to put your logo on flyers? Do they just need to come in and
Yeah, there's an application. They would-
application,
yep.
get permission to do that?
Yep.
Okay.
I think we should move forward and get that registered as soon as possible, now that, you know, this meeting is actually open to the public and is it being recorded?
Yes, it is.
So that it's gonna come out sooner, I think we should jump on that sooner than later before that fake page jumps on it too.
Perfect. If everyone likes it as written, we will post for the 10 days and it'll go to city council for approval.
I didn't see no problem with it.
Nope.
Guys?
Sounds good.
No, I think it makes sense. It does say Cambridge on there though, in that regulations and governing use, but other than that, I thought it looked good.
There was actually one that just says Isani, City of Isani
What is it?
on
And
Facebook.
then there's the community of generations, I think we need to get that.
No, I'm just saying on the actual ordinance itself, on
Oh.
that 125-2 or whatever, if you're gonna
Oh,
post it,
gotcha.
just, that was the only thing I saw on there that needed to be changed, but otherwise I thought it looked great.
I think that's kind of something that was pulled out.
Well, yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
With that being said, draft state fire code ordinance.
All right, Councilmember, this is mine item. So per request of Fire Chief Jankovic, it was to look at the city amending their city code to include the state fire code. We did have this reviewed. Do you want to make mention? Mayor Johnson's arrived at 5:11.
Sorry I'm late, everybody. Yeah, if only you could fire me.
All right, so we did look at adding the Minnesota State Fire Code to our city code, and this would be in Chapter 11 under Building Construction, adopting Article 4. And this was a model policy from the League of Minnesota Cities was recommended to adopt, and then gives more jurisdiction within our city to go with the fire district to enforce more of this. Although I will say from our city attorney, he did review this and did approve it as it was presented to him. However, we did still need, we already abided by it, whether we had this adopted in city code or not. So just so that was clear, but then this does make it crystal clear that we do.
I believe we should try to go forward with it. I think that's, gives us someplace to stand on. Dan,
Yeah.
I would agree.
Jenny,
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and
Mayor Johnson. I'm gonna turn this back over to Mayor Johnson, and he can pick up on D2.
I'm going to do one more follow-up to the fire district item that I had here. And one of the other items that the fire chief had asked us to consider was an amendment to the joint powers agreement, as they were looking to include language and verbiage to be able to collect fees for fire services. As you remember, this was something that we are waiting for our new attorney to get on board and then to review this. He did have time to review the joint powers agreement and come up to speed on everything, and he did not see any issues with it. He said substantively he would approve it. There were a few typo where there was like a state statute that was listed, however, was not the correct state statute, so there might be some tweaks we would have for it. But those of you who are attending the fire board could say that our if that's still the desire of this council is to move forward, that we would be in favor of amending the JPA.
Yes, I guess I spoke out of turn when I told them that the city, us council members were 110% behind it, and I didn't see any reason why anybody else would argue that.
You were actually absent the meeting that I attended, Councilman Lundin, and I did tell him that the council was on board pending our attorney looking at this, which now the attorney's looked at it. And the attorney's on board too, there just needs to be some tweaks in the jargon and miscoding and what have you, but the attorney doesn't see any issues with it either, so now you could go forward and tell them that, exactly that.
Yeah, I didn't think there would be a problem.
Unless the council has anything further to question or discuss or anything.
Do you want to come to you? I'm sure Mr. Gordon knows it, but you were why this came about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the argument that I've made and Mayor Johnson's also made is, why should one entity or one person or anybody that lives in the city of Isani be responsible for somebody's fire?
In Stanchfield or Bradford or,
wherever, and that's, because somebody is underinsured or, or they're negligent, that isn't my problem.
I don't think our taxpayers should be hit for something that happened in a township. Absolutely not.
So, but the first hurdle that, so everybody's aware of, and I've talked to Chief Jankovich about this is to get the amendment to the joint powers agreement. Then we'll have to determine the hours of billing. One entity the way it's set up is, and it's been like this, matter of fact, it was like this when Lester Peterson was chief. And it was set at 8 hours, and everything after that was billable hours. And one entity, which is not he's not at the meetings, he's not part of the meeting, is arguing that he says it wants to be 12 hours, which takes this certain person out of the realm because it was an 8-hour incident and not a 12. But
Friends of friends of friends, that's how that works.
but he doesn't realize he can't go backwards. We can only, from going forward, the existing policy was set, he should be paying it, so that 12 hours isn't gonna affect. Well, first of all, we gotta get through this hurdle first.
I believe the fire chief said it has to be unanimous too, with all the entities in the fire district.
And that's kind
Correct.
of where we're at.
Yeah.
But the city, they kind of look at us as if the city of Isani's okay with it, then we should be okay with it.
Not all of them do that.
No, all of them but one.
They've gotten better. And, and then there again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but previous things that have happened has left a bad taste. And, with this painting of the fire station building and the police station, how we did that, they are rather impressed and want to work with us more frequently and easier
Than before,
than before.
most definitely.
So you're all aware of that, carrot sometimes gains you a lot in the end. So,
They like us again, guys.
so that being said, I'm done, I'm with, I'm assuming you're done.
Good, I'm glad you're done with your rant, Councilman Lundin.
Okay,
Can we move on? Let's go back to D2, the Whiskey Road sidewalk updates for Councilman Lundin's information. And the rest of the council, Jason and I did go out and neither homeowner was home. However, I left my card on their door and remarkably within 4 minutes, would you say, Mr. Cook? One of the residents called me back and he kind of came off as real standoffish, real nope, nope, nope. And then I kind of made the suggestion of what if the city continued his fence along Whiskey Road, which is a cedar privacy fence, and then gave him a compensation. What did we call that, Jason? The easement compensation as well. And his exact quote-unquote statement to me was, you work your numbers and get back to me. I mean, so he went from no way to, well, listen, depending on what you come to the table with, which Mr. Cook was blown away because he said, you've got the furthest than anybody's gotten with him. So, I mean, I guess what I'm looking for is what do you guys, and I can tell, or I should say that if we did put this fence in and we did give them a compensation, it's not going to jar those numbers or that price too much.
I'd say you probably have to do the same for any other people too, not just one.
If the neighbor across the street wants the same thing, then I would agree.
Yeah.
Those are the only two properties that we have to technically negotiate with. The rest of them we have the easements to.
Oh, okay.
So there's only two. The rest
Yeah.
of them we already have the easements to. We have the go-ahead. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but, so those were the only two we had to bargain with, and it seems like if he does it, his neighbor's gonna do it type of thing. But if he says no, his neighbor's gonna say no. So whatever, he seems to be the gatekeeper, so to speak. You know, that if we get through to him, we'll get through to his neighbor, no problem. So I guess what I was looking for is, what would you like the next step to be? Do you want me to negotiate with him? Do you want me to say, we'll put that fence up, we'll give him that easement reimbursement, as well as the people across the street from him?
I think
I don't,
safety of the sidewalk is worth
and I
negotiating.
understood Councilman Gordon's argument in this. It is a lot of money to settle with. What if we kind of did it in increments to where we build this fence, we build his neighbor's fence, we give him the easement compensation, and then we kind of better budget, I guess, is Mike's not here? Better budget, I guess we could, for this project, so it doesn't hit us all in the pocket at once.
I think the only thing we gotta do is we're gonna have to give them the easement compensation first. Because then if we go put a fence up there and all of a sudden he says no, we're SOL. Then we're out of fence that we already paid for. I think we should do the easement assessment plus the fence, and then we can deal with doing the sidewalk. I can't stress enough how important sidewalks are.
And I kind of miss, I mean, Councilman Gordon kind of put me in check by saying I can't always use the children as an excuse.
And I'm not questioning your heart at all, Jeff. I mean, I think that.
I know, I know.
I just think we gotta have a better reason than that is all I was saying.
And I agree. So even if it was a child or an adult or anybody at that matter, if somebody was to go to cross that street and was to get hit by a vehicle, they're going to sue this city.
Well, I mean, they have to cross the street anyway, was my point, that they're already gonna cross, if they're coming from across the other side.
Well, like, I'll use my son as an example. He has to walk to school. He has to cross Whiskey Road where there's no crosswalk, just to get over to the other side from
Right.
Dogwood to get on that sidewalk and go down, and then he's got to cross back across.
Again, right?
It's just a,
But,
Yeah.
but with that
he literally
sidewalk-
crosses Whiskey Road 3 times before he gets to the middle school.
And only one with a crossing guard.
Yep,
Yeah,
only one crosswalk.
yeah,
but
right.
With with the
With Gardner.
sidewalk being completed, everybody on the east side of Whiskey Road can walk all the way up to the cross guard. Everybody on the west side of Whiskey Road has the sidewalk already.
And they can also walk all the way up to that
all the way
crossroad.
through.
Almost.
So, yeah,
No safety issues, no,
no, yeah, there's one spot.
You have to go
And
across
By the
one,
brook.
one time,
Yeah.
but
But
One time.
there's- Yeah.
versus 3. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't,
I think.
and I understand that you had the budgetary concern, and I get
yeah,
it.
I mean, I'm more, I mean, we're already having to raise the tax rate this year, or it looks like we're gonna have to. I mean, another $100,000 or, you know, whatever it is in today's dollars now is, I mean, that's a lot of money to spend in a year where we're already.
And
having
that's
to
why
look
I'm
at
kind of
raising that,
suggesting
so-
maybe we do this in increments more
Yeah, and I
so
think
than,
that's something I'd be able to get behind, yeah,
than
This
just hit us
sidewalk
all at
is-
once.
yeah.
This connectivity, we've been talking about this for a long time.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you
Right.
drive by
We
and it's like,
talked
what were
about
they
that
thinking,
when I
you know?
first got on city
Well,
council, finishing that sidewalk stretch.
10 years
Yeah,
that I've been on the council, we've discussed that sidewalk.
This is the closest we've ever been.
yeah.
And I think we need to give them, get that in writing with them, give them their compensation for easement compensation, and do the fence, do that first. then
So let's do the easement compensation first, and then if he goes with that, then we,
We're still doing the fence, but it doesn't have to be done today.
right.
We could even build that fence in at the time of, that we.
The sidewalk,
do the
correct.
sidewalk.
And we could also have him understand that we're gonna give you the easement compensation, and we'll build that fence when the sidewalk goes in, type agreement.
We always kind of knew that we were gonna have to buy easement for
But-
this project
But
anyway.
prior to that, this gentleman wasn't budgeting.
No.
Right, exactly.
And-
That's why we always kept
And
hitting a
he's
dead
telling
end.
me that he doesn't need the money, but when I said the fence is what perked his interest. And then he wants to know how far we can go with this fence, and I wouldn't be objective to go all the way, we have an easement in front of that address too, right, Jason?
But you gotta remember line of sight at the
Yeah,
intersections.
we'd have to stop basically at the right-of-way for.
So we could
for their
take that
street.
fence and continue it to that corner where our easement is, and, I
Where
mean,
the
nobody else
property
in the
corner
city
is.
has a fenced front yard, so we couldn't fence in his front yard, but we could go to that.
Side yard.
Yeah, we could go along Whiskey all the way to that point of easement in the front of the home.
That might still be within the line of sight
Of the street.
of the street.
Intersection.
Yep, yeah.
Yeah,
It
the
might
stop
be.
sign, you know.
He was
yeah,
just
we-
concerned
We
about,
just had that issue with a resident over off South Passage. We had to make them move their fence. And that was a battle because of
He
line
was-
of sight issues.
he was concerned about the trash that he was gonna collect in his yard, and then, who's gonna weed whip that? Because if you look across the street at the other side, the weeds are waist high.
It's county.
That's a county road. You're correct.
The county mows that road maybe once a year, the ditches.
Right along Whiskey, the city has taken it on as being an entrance corridor to the city, so that actually Public Works does mow it.
Oh,
So
Because the
if
county
Public Works
would
does it,
mow
now we're gonna
once a
ask them
year.
to go weed whip, and then we're nicking people's fences, and then that's gonna come an issue too.
well, his fence is gonna have to be on his property, I would imagine.
Well, then I think we should be enforcing that weed whipping along that, that's a whole nother issue, but
The other side.
we should be enforcing that, so then this gentleman has no gripe. And I'm not one to be a jerk about enforcing things, but
Well, the existing fences that are up now
on their property,
on their property.
so they need to be weed whipping. Okay.
That's probably part of the lawn nuisance.
So I guess the only question that I have left is, Jason, you kind of had a figure that I had, and I don't have it in front of me, but you went by their land tax value, correct?
Right, just to give you that kind of range of numbers that you could negotiate with, you know, a baseline was just what the property value is by the tax record, by the square foot, and then how big the easement was. It's common to do half of that value, for an easement and 100% to 200% for a full right-of-way, like acquisition where it actually gets segmented off and straight up becomes the city's as opposed to an easement to be there. So there's that kind of range for you to negotiate with, I guess, while still being substantially less than, you know, substantial lawyer fees or anything if you had to go a different direction, so.
Okay.
And what was that dollar amount?
I guess I'd made those sheets.
One was like, oh boy, one was mighty low. Was it 800 or 600?
Yeah, I mean, I think the low end on the, one was about $800, the other one was.
$847 and some change, and then the other one was $1,100, and so we could go from that low end to the number we've discussed, and I'm
Well,
not gonna say that.
Right, and that's where I didn't know what you wanted to say here.
No.
But at the same time, you might even need to go to what your actual attorney fees might be to find out what your top cap might be, as opposed to just going by the property value topic.
Okay.
Because, you know, before you start having to pay attorneys, you know, there's always that.
Which I'd rather not do,
Right.
so.
So, you know, that's the other end of the range, I guess, but,
I'm sure he's gonna want this drawn up by an attorney, and then he doesn't wanna pay for it, so we're gonna end up having to
Right.
want that attorney fees, and how much is that gonna be at this point?
Right.
Right, so we'd still have to make an easement exhibit, you know, with the right description for them to be able to sign it and, you know, and get that all.
I mean, I personally,
filed.
I think if the council's gonna let it happen, I'll go negotiate with the guy and I'll tell him, hey, we'll gladly build that fence once the sidewalk's put in, but what I'm looking for is what seems reasonable to you for an easement reimbursement, and see what he says.
Sure.
But then you need to have your numbers per square.
Jason's got him.
That's what I mean, you need to have that with you and say, hey.
Oh, yeah.
This is the writing on the wall, this is what it's valued at, so,
I can sell manure to her farmer, I'll get her done.
no problem on it.
Right. Let's make note Councilman Burgley is present now. We do have a full council. Anything further that we want to discuss in that matter, or can we move on, fellas? Oh, Ms. Wood?
Yes, Mayor. Just so staff is clear on the direction, if our nuisance policy does state that we can enforce weeds along a fence if the rest of the entire area of their yard is mowed, the direction from committee is that we do want to enforce.
I think we should send them a pleasant, not a threatening letter. Yeah,
Okay.
Good way of putting
I
it.
guess that you can't really get them for having weeds. It's the length of them is what we're after, correct?
Correct. It's
Correct.
Beyond, I believe,
They
10
are
inches.
pretty high.
Because
or
the ditch
9,
is,
8.
most of it
Sorry,
is all
8
weeds.
inches.
No-
8 inches, but I think, you know, for next year, we definitely need to stay on top of that to where we can say, hey, make sure you do your due diligence on weed whipping the backside of your fence as well. Keep in mind, there is an 8-inch length, and the city pretty much has better things to do than weed watch.
Okay.
I think we could send that letter, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, because I don't believe that we've done so in the past. So just so everyone's aware that we may get some new calls if we're now looking
I
at
just think
that.
if we could calmly, collectively, politely remind
Educate
them.
first?
Yeah, there-
Education.
educate, there you go.
Yes.
Education week.
There you go.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Moving on to D5, the field training officer compensation. Ms. Wood?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Okay, as you are aware, in our LALS 217 union negotiations, it was agreed upon that we would pay field training officer pay to officers who are senior, experienced, and trained to do so, which currently we have one officer, who is Officer Saba. It's a great value to the city because we are required to field train our officers when they are new or when they just come into our police force, and Chief Myers can speak more to that if you would like more information on exactly the process. Currently, as we're gaining our full staff capacity back, this year alone already, Officer Saba has approximately 1,040 hours into FTOing our new officers. He has done so with the additional workload and time that entails with no compensation. So what I'm looking for is discussion on if we want to offer Officer Saba the $2 per hour when he FTOs, which is in the contract to start January 1st, effective the beginning of November, as we have 2 new officers will be coming on.
The guy's already done over 1,000 hours, for crying out loud. And we've given him nothing. I mean, I did when we had this meeting this morning, my first question was, are we back paying that? And when I was told no, then it kind of made up my mind, but I guess I would look for what somebody else's mind would be.
Well, if it's only for those hours that they're doing training, I don't see any reason that'd be a problem. I don't think, what's fair is fair. I mean, you know,
What's practice of other agencies? What's common practice?
In the research that we did when we were negotiating the contract, most cities do offer compensation. It varies. We were right in the same ballpark of the collective average, I would say, but I would say the majority that I saw all did.
Okay.
They do it differently. Some are per hour, some do just hourly wage all the time. We chose the model that was just paying when they were FTOing.
And I'm with Councilman Lundin. I think fair is fair.
And it's putting in extra work for them. I mean, sometimes it ain't, trying to teach somebody to do something, sometimes isn't as easy as just doing it yourself. You know?
So are they,
I'm sure Councilman Gordon knows that. You
Absolutely.
Hire somebody and, I'm sure you wish you could pay somebody extra money to train sometimes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, it's way harder to train than it is to just do it, so.
Yeah, so, I'm all for it, that's
What-
fine.
another, so is he, when he does this, is he already working overtime? Or is
Not-
he doing this on his regular shift hours? There's no
No, our
overtime involved?
Field training officers are assigned, like our new officer starts on Wednesday, and he's just working the same shift, so it's not overtime unless he's actually would be working without a trainee per se.
Right, okay.
So we're just paying his normally hourly rate
yeah.
and just adding.
So what I was getting at was if he was, any of those hours, if he's already making time and a half, and we're gonna add $2 more an hour to it.
No, and
No.
actually, in reality, when we do the scheduling, if we have extra holdover or shift time, I usually don't schedule a trainee with them, just because it doesn't make sense to pay both of them overtime,
Right.
just for the coverage piece.
Sounds good to me.
Any other discussion on it? For it? Against it? We good?
Yep.
Good?
Okay, if the consensus is to move forward with this, I'll put it on the next city council meeting.
Move forward. D6, lateral pay for new full-time police officer position. Chief Myers?
Well, as you're aware, we've been going through hiring process. We still have 2 more to go. In all the chief conferences and other chief law enforcement officers, if they talk about the current issues in law enforcement, recruitment is probably number 1, if not number 2, just because the quantity and quality of new officers coming out of the training program. Just so you're aware, in order to go through, to be eligible to be hired, they have to have at least a 2-year degree plus a skills program. So it sets aside any other job opportunities. So these people have to be dedicated from 3 years on to go into law enforcement. So that pool has been dwindling even from the educational side. It's one of the biggest issues facing even us. In the past, we have not offered the lateral pay to officers. Therefore, very rarely will we get an officer that's working somewhere else that actually applies for our position. Because if they're already in the middle of their pay step, for them to go backwards, they don't even apply. And so that's one of the biggest keys, to be able to at least recruit or have the opportunity to hire somebody who's experienced. We were able to, Officer Saba actually worked up in a northern Minnesota agency, wanted to get back closer to home, so he came with 3 years on. For example, our field training program, it's 14 to 16 weeks, and his field training was probably, I think, 8-9 weeks or somewhere in there, so it actually cuts it down in half. I talked to some other agencies that have totally changed their recruitment. They are not recruiting kids out of school or candidates out of school. They're solely focusing on taking from other agencies. And they've seen the success, there's the success in retention. There's other agencies I know that, local agencies within the county, probably out of the last 5 or 6 people they've hired, only 1 made it through their training and probationary period. So that's another piece of hiring experienced officers. Not only the shorter investment on the front side, better candidates, but the odds that they'll actually successfully complete the program with the skills. I mean, the law enforcement career, they say 3 to 5 years before you're fairly proficient at all the things that we've came into. So getting somebody with that 3 to 5 year mark, I think trying to put an economic value to that would be very difficult. There's a lot of things out there. There's less risk involved. I know that one chief I talked to that recruits experienced officers said his city property damage has gone down dramatically, because usually in the first years when you're not used to driving, type, on the computer, talking on the radio and all that stuff, and and you talk to most officers, we've all had our learning experience, myself included, in my first year of law enforcement, but that was for a different city that paid for that, so we're good. So that's one piece. Which I thought was kind of interesting, that he actually noted that in his budgetary thing, that the damage has actually gone down. So what we're looking for is direction for that, to allow the administration as far as the HR we're not going to say, if you have X amount of years, you're going to come at X amount of step, because X amount of years in a population of 500 is different than X amount of years in a population of 10,000. So those experiences can be evaluated based on their abilities, just like anything else. So looking for that direction. With that, with council approval, we move forward with, if we have a candidate, to present that back to council with, here's the candidate, here's the experience, here's what staff recommendation as far as the starting pay level, and then create the MOU through the union to go that way.
Which would potentially be Ms. Brooks and possibly yourself that would
Correct.
make that judgment.
Correct.
I noticed, G7 is the same thing with maintenance. You kill two birds with one stone, like Matt throw in his 2 cents.
Matt, you wanna,
Yeah, I fall in line the same thing with Travis. I don't get anybody to apply that has their water and wastewater licenses. It takes 1 year to get a Class D and 3 years to get a Class C license. And I'm fully staffed, so I'm not looking for anybody right now, but just moving forward in the future to just post for the full pay scale so that somebody can see the range and possibly come in and say, hey, that's what I'm looking for.
that would be with your direction, Ms. Brooks, and possibly Josie's then that would
Correct,
administrate that.
correct.
And I think we once already approved staff to do the same with staff here.
Correct.
In City Hall itself.
Yes.
I see absolutely no problem with this.
I agree.
I think if we can, you're gonna probably get better candidates, you're gonna have less issues with a cadet, as per se. You know, sometimes they come out of school and they're.
Or somebody that's green on Matt's end. I mean, it'd be on either end. Somebody that's green versus seasoned would be huge for either or of you, and potentially for the city. And I think in the long run would save this city money. So I'm with Councilman Lundy, and I'm for this all the way.
So what's gonna happen is they're gonna come here and use the city of Racine as a stepping stool when they start out, and then they get their certification, which the city probably helped pay for.
Correct.
And train them for. They're gonna turn around and say, see ya, I'm getting $10 an hour more over here.
Yeah.
You know, I think this way we probably get more longevity with employees also.
And from what you're saying, Councilman Lundin, I mean, if you think about it, if we grab a new officer who lives in the metro, went through skills, they're gonna come here, get their experience, and most likely not stay. Where if we get an experienced officer, they're gonna pick Isani because that's a department they wanna stay with.
Any other discussion we need, or you guys for this, against it? I mean,
Oh, it makes sense, I think it makes sense.
I like the idea. That's, when we got the new lieutenant, I think my words to you were, how can we afford the guy with so much experience? What attracted him to come from his current job here? But,
The amazing
and he answered that
department.
question for me that night, so I thought we were pretty fortunate to get him on board.
and
So,
we
yeah,
could be
I'm all
even
for
more
it.
fortunate if we put this in place here. We can just start
That's-
picking from other
Yep.
departments.
That's, yeah, exactly what I was getting at, the years
Yeah.
of experience that him, for example, brought into the department.
Or even Mr. Sylvester at that. Start headhunting other people in the cities, man.
All
We
of a
gotta-
sudden, we're getting the good people rather than they're leaving, that'd be good.
Right?
When I
Any
first
other-
got on here, we were losing all kinds of people, so.
So I think we pretty much killed 6 and 7.
6 and 7, Miss Wood. We're thumbsing up. Moving on to D8, City Council Agenda Request, the Isani Cub Scout Pack 523. Miss Wood.
All right, we did have a city council agenda request, and this is coming in from Miss Busen. So her, I'm not sure if she was in charge or she's representing the Isani County Cub Scout Pack 523. They've been in the community for approximately 60 years. And as you see in your packet, she does have the full request and her explanation here. But the long and the short of it is that she is seeking to be able to maybe highlight, post these things in a display case that the city has. I believe that she wanted something indefinitely. She did not, I don't think, put an exact time frame here. But one thing, there's 6 frames and they have ribbons. I don't know, do you still have the picture? Okay, Mayor Johnson has a picture of what they are, if you'd like to pass that around. She did send that to me. The one thing that I would like council committee to discuss here is if we look at this request, I'd like it to be broader request on others as well. So we have a lot of organizations within the city, and I know some cities do have a policy for things like this, and they have like even a subcommittee who looks and takes in requests to decide, because you could get potentially flooded with lots of different things. While they can be eclectic and be fun, they may not be. So if we want to look at this, we should look at kind of the idea of having any or all community organizations give us things that they want highlighted.
I'm kind of to blame for this, fellas, because I did say that I wanted city achievements in one case and Isani history in the other. So here comes some more history. But staff has made a good point that when do we say enough's enough? Because if we do take the scouts and it sits in there for forever, and then you come and say, hey, my business is part of history of Isani too, can I put something in there? And then Councilman Burgley does the same, and then actually, then we're cramming it all in this case, and do we have a timeline on it? Do we allow it? I mean, I'm torn here, so I'm looking for 4 other creative minds here to pop in and give me your idea on what you think.
Don't use the community center now.
They haven't used it in quite a while.
Huh?
They haven't used it in quite a while. Cub Scouts, Pack 523.
Use the community center?
They used to use
They
it.
used to. I think they may have, well, I think they maybe sometimes do. Depends on the size of their group. I know we do hold out a date for them and the Boy Scouts, I think, but it depends. If they're too big for there, I think they go to the school.
Yeah, we've gone to the school before, or the Harvest Christian Center before.
Yeah.
I guess I wouldn't see a problem with them displaying it, but I think we need more time on it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I think like a rotating thing.
So then what do we do with it? I mean, because some of these people will just dump it in
And I
our
think-
lap.
Well, I think it should be somewhat of a, like, I would keep businesses out of it. I would look at which groups we have in our community, which ones do community service within our city, and have those eligible for having a display for 6 months or whatever odd year,
If this
whatever
is-
time limit.
If, council member, if this is something that we want to entertain, and Mayor, maybe perhaps we kick this back to staff, and I can look at what a policy would look like and put some parameters around that to see what other cities do and exactly where it would be, maybe look at timelines, look at
I think that'd be a
what
good
the
idea.
process would be for requesting to put stuff in, maybe look at a policy then if this is something that maybe we want to look into a little further.
Yeah, the only thing I see a problem with the timeline, and I'm all for a timeline, is if we say you got 6 months and then we have to clear it out, but nobody else wants to come in, and I'm not saying they won't, but it might be a slow start at the beginning. Maybe they can renew it if we don't have anything to fill it in with or something like that, so,
We'd give them a little bit of a notice too.
yeah.
You get a list of say you have a list of the community clubs or nonprofit organizations or whatever within the city limits that do community service type things.
My only worry would be, what if they give these ribbons to the city and then their 6 months is up and they never come back for them?
Yeah.
Well,
There
we
would
could
have
tell
to
them
be
right, we
something
could tell
in
them
the
right out,
policy.
yeah,
There'd have to
I
be
think we
something
should just
written in
kick
that
it
we
back
would-
and
yeah.
let you
Yeah.
do your due diligence, Ms. Wood.
Yeah.
That's what I would,
'Cause you have a lot of nonprofit groups within the city limits.
yeah.
I just, we tell them when they gotta pick it up, we put a timeline on it, and
Yep.
we could, if we can't, if nobody else wants to fill in, we could just say, okay, we want it for another 6 months or something like that, or.
I think kicking it back to staff and to do more information finding would be a good thing to do.
But like I say, if you had the list, I was getting at is, so you wanted, since Cub Scouts were the first kind of to approach us on it, give them the first 6 months, and then
Yeah.
maybe the next one that you want to Lions or Rum River Rods or Girl
VFW
Scouts
or-
or Brownies, if
Isn't
they
there a
have
Rotary
many more,
Club?
but
Yeah,
You give them a little notice so they can get something together
sure.
before the first 6 months is up and their 6 months is coming. Give them a notice so they have time to gather some things to put in the display case before,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, do we think this kind of belongs more at the community center than at City Hall, or do we have a preference on that at all?
We
or-
we used to have a case over there. We had that discussion this morning, but the case was removed during the remodel and never put back.
We had one over at the community center?
We
no
used
longer
to.
do. We used to have, actually, when the Lions managed and operated the building, they had one that was for the Boy Scouts, and they had some trophies in there and some things in there, plaques. And during the remodel, it was to take that down, and then they found, I'm not sure where they put their things, but they found other places, and we didn't put up that old case anymore. The one challenge would be over at the community center, so we try to keep the walls very free of anything except for the sound panels, because we do have more and more weddings coming in there, and nobody wants to have a lot of backdrop things that they want to
Right.
cover.
They don't want no
I
Boy
think
Scouts
more-
in their
yeah.
wedding photos.
Sure, sure. I think more people actually see it here than they would at the
Okay.
community center.
Yeah, I think it's a cool idea. I just think probably a time limit, definitely like the rest of you guys are saying, probably makes sense.
It just makes it fair for all the other
Absolutely.
groups.
So I just think we'll kick it back to you guys and let you do your due diligence on that and
Okay.
bring it back to us.
Sounds good. Will do.
D9, City Council Agenda Request by Best Western Hotel.
All right, we received this request. So, in city code, our water and sewer rates are based on residential, commercial, or a hotel motel. So what had happened with the Best Western Plus is when they had come online for services, they were coded incorrectly in the system as commercial and not as a hotel, as we did not have one. It was just an error within our billing department that it was not caught. So what the hotel differs in how they get charged base fees is per unit, not based on usage. So what that meant is that they were charged an additional, because we do have it allowed in city code that we can go back for any errors, just like we would go back if there was a credit as well, as far back as 12 months. They were, had some billing adjustments for March through August, which amounted to $4,250.20, so a considerable amount difference. What they're requesting is not necessarily to have that waived, but what they're requesting is to have our city code looked at, that they don't agree with it. They have some other cities, one of them is.
In Wisconsin and Fargo.
Well,
They're not
and
even in the
Detroit
state of
Lakes.
Minnesota.
Well, and there's a Detroit Lakes one, so there is one in Minnesota where they do not bill the way that we bill. My recommendation on this is that you kick this one back to staff and we dig into it deeper to find out why we do have our city code. As we never had a hotel before. I've never dug into it before. Not sure, I'm sure there was a reason though at the time of why we have things charged the way it is. We certainly don't want to not charge a certain way and have residents pay more because someone else is paying less. So I think we should dig into this a little deeper.
I think I would look at the surrounding communities with hotels, Blaine, blah, blah, you know, Forest Lake, whatever, and seeing what they're doing on their water village use and sewer use. Personally, I feel you should not be billed because you're this business, and if you use this much, you get charged this much more. You get charged for how much water you use. I mean, if you use 5 gallons of water, it should be billed for 5 gallons. If you use 5,000, you should get billed for 5,000.
Part of the way that structure is by the Department of Health and the water. We do a water, we have an appropriations permit through the DNR, and they do want us to have tiered structures, or we do get kind of, I don't know if dinged is the right word on it, but they want us to have that as a conservation measure. So we're not incentivizing people to not watch how much water they use. So some of that is why those tiers are created.
But in that retrospect, the state of Minnesota's health department in plumbing district, we are limited to how much water we can give at every faucet. That is in the state code. So every faucet has to be limited to 2.3 gallons per minute. I mean, you can't supersede that, you can't. So all faucets have to meet that requirement. So they're already being dinged being conservative, let's use that, we're being conservative on the water use. Shower heads are only allowed 1.6 gallons per minute or something, I don't know the numbers for sure, but they are all limited to be conservative for water use. Their toilets went from 3-gallon flush toilet to a 1.6 gallon flush toilet. That was all state code, that is to conserve water. So the DNR is working off an old thing where the state's working on a new thing. They need to balance out. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So they are being conservative what they use. I mean, realistically, I mean, as long as somebody isn't leaving the faucet on all day long, they're not gonna use any more water than what they have.
I think kicking it back to the staff and checking surrounding hotels would be a good idea. I don't know that we should budge on this or make a decision at this moment until we get a little more information.
Not that I want to open another can of worms that's already open, but have they met our existing ordinance yet on landscaping and all those
Yes.
things?
Yes.
Yes, they have.
So
Drive by, it looks pretty good.
So they ended up tearing up the sod to put 4 inches of topsoil down?
They
Put the
sure
sod
did.
back down? Oh,
They've done everything and not fought.
good.
Okay.
Kicking it back to
How do we
you.
handle like apartment buildings and stuff like that? I mean, how does that base fee work for, I mean, it's just one base fee for the whole building? Or I mean, I'm sure it depends on if they meter them out separately or,
I think apartment buildings are by residential, per residential unit within the apartment building.
okay.
Do you know off the top of your head, Don?
Yeah, Administrator Wood, Mayor Johnson, City Council. The base fees are part of the structure of our whole billing system for water. And it's based upon the actual contribution, theoretically contribution for the system itself and the buildings, the pumps, everything dealing with the system is theoretically paid out of the base charge. A consumption charge is the actual operation charges for the electricity, for pumping the water, for manpower, for everything else to actually operate the system. But the two are joined together, because if we didn't have the base charge, there'd be a higher consumption charge.
So it's by unit, Don.
The base charges are by unit, and they're assigned whether a single-family home is 1 unit. Don't have it off my head, Josie, what an apartment is, but they're a part of a unit, that kind of thing, motels. This was put in place a long time ago, before we actually had the hotel built in town. So these charges have been in there. So we'll have to evaluate all of that if you want to look at it.
It's a good question, though.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, I don't think if you have an apartment or renting an apartment, I don't typically think you pay a water bill. Usually
Okay.
that's, usually it's included in what you're renting, right? But
So Councilmember Gordon, it is apartment units, shall be charged at 80% of the base fee charged per unit. So they're
Okay.
not 100% per unit.
so they're getting a little break if they put it in an
Getting a little
apartment building.
break. And then
versus-
the language in reference to what we're talking about right now, motels, hotels, and manufactured housing units shall be charged 1 base fee per unit. So the apartments are getting a little break compared to the
Okay.
others, but still charged per unit.
We have any disagreement in kicking it back to staff and
No,
having?
I'd like to look at it, yeah.
Okay. Moving on to D10, the city council agenda request for Lloyd Stevens. Ms. Wood?
And Mayor, I'm going to have Matt Sylvester speak on this since he did some background on this.
Okay, so Sheila and I were both contacted by this guy. This guy was recently annexed into town. His name is Lloyd Stevens, and because he's recently annexed into town, he has a private well. Per city code, he needs to have his well tested yearly. And he can have it tested, or if he doesn't have it tested, he can have the city test it. It costs $90 if the city tests it. He's looking to have that fee, to have it tested, waived moving forward. He had his water tested this year, well passed, but he's looking to have that fee waived annually moving forward. He's asking that to go
what's
to
the
city
reason
council.
there?
What's that?
What's the reason there for having a waiver?
He is a senior citizen who has minimum social security and has some health issues on some medications, so he's
okay.
kind of sitting kind of tough, but he had his water tested this year and is well passed. He had some current concerns about it testing. I tried to tell him that, don't worry about your well failing until it fails, sort of thing, but he was a little worked up about it. There was some grant money available through Isani County Public Health this year, but he had his well tested before he really found out about that. I can't guarantee next year if there's still gonna be grant money available for that. There could be, but they won't tell me if there's or not. They won't know until next year.
So this was in the agreement when we annexed the properties? That,
Well, it's in per city code that if you have private well, you have to have it tested yearly. And he was recently brought in, so this is really the first year or whatever,
First-
he had to have his well
okay,
tested.
gotcha. So it was already existing
Yes,
before we annexed?
yes, correct, yep.
There's a lot of homes that are in the city of Iceni that did have private wells because we can't get water to them. I know that. And I hate to say it, we waive this for them, those people aren't over it, they're flipping around.
I will say that the attorney did review our packet, and he does not recommend that this is a basis for waiving. We should not
I
waive
agree.
this.
I'll say this because I'll admit that he called me first and I pawned him off to Sheila and Matt. I don't mean to say
you.
it that way, but it is what it is. Sorry, guys. He's got my sympathy, but there's no way that I could waive this because then there's how many other annex people that could come up to us and gripe about the same thing. And
I was just hoping,
And-
the only thing I fear is that that wasn't,
there before we annexed?
no, that policy was not told to all these residents that
There's
just
a lot
got,
of things that wasn't said in there.
There's a lot of things that,
so he might not be the first one to
oh,
come
he
up.
probably won't be the last, but
Or
it's,
that's what I meant, not the last.
yeah.
There's plenty of people that are in the town that have a well before this annexation. I mean, Ms. Woods probably knows which one I'm referring to. She has rang my phone off the hook multiple times about this well testing. And,
Not everyone likes it.
yeah, and if we waive this for this gentleman, he'd be the first one to say you did it for him, you need to do it for me. So it's just gonna be a snowball effect. I'm sure that if he's on social security, if he's collecting disability of any sort, I'm sure there's a state fund program someplace that would help do this. I don't know what Waterworks charges in Cambridge to test them.
The Sandy County Public Health told me that if you bring the sample to them, they'll have, the company will pick it up on Tuesdays, and it was it Sauk Rapids, and it was $35 to have your well tested through them.
There you go, there's some good information for him. And he should be able to do that. And I think they even give you the test packet to bring it to the board, so you go get it from, you put it in their sample, and they take it. So I think that would be, my personal opinion, deny it.
Part of your job description now, Matt. Go get it and bring it to him and then bring it back.
I mean, the gentleman could do that himself for $35, it's, yeah.
I'm sympathetic, but no way. Any other comments, concern, direction we want to give? Are we all saying nay to this? We all agree on that? Fair enough. D11, the annual review of snow plowing, Mr. Matt Sylvester.
Can't we wait till November?
Right?
Get it done now.
I know, I'm kidding.
We got to be ahead of the game.
My bad.
Are we gonna use enough salt this year?
Oh,
We'll get to
geez.
there. So this is our annual review, and the first one here is the exempt sidewalk on Bel Air Boulevard. Bel Air Boulevard has been exempt in the past because of legacy pine growth over there. I think the fact is just to remove Bel Air Boulevard from the exempt sidewalk list and start doing Bel Air Boulevard. I don't know if there'll be a whole lot of discussion on that. Okay. The second one here on the Villages on the Realm Association sidewalk easement. So in the developer's agreement, it states that on the, is it the Rick Harrison developer's map there, that it states that any sidewalk on that map that has an easement, that the city is responsible for that sidewalk. The problem is that that sidewalk on that map doesn't grant any easements on any sidewalk that's in there. So currently, you can see that we do the sidewalk along Whiskey Road. That's a first day sidewalk. We plow it, first day school route. My suggestion would be that we stop plowing that sidewalk until we get the easement for that sidewalk.
Why were we ever plowing it without an easement would be my question.
I would have to
School
go
route.
back to,
Doesn't matter, we don't have that easement. They should be responsible for it, and they should be held responsible for it, not us. And if they're not gonna do it, well, then they need to give the city the easement so we can make sure that it's done properly.
Mayor and council, the history on this, this is, previously, this policy had been reviewed annually at the Public Works Committee, and it was that recognized that kids did use the sidewalk heading to schools. We have lots of travelers walking from that area. But at that time, we never did know exactly where the easement, exactly if we had it or not had it, so we erred on the side of, let's do it because we have a lot of walkers there. This document about the Harrison site plan, we did not know where this was until recently.
So could we reach out to, I guess it would be the developer? The association?
It would be the association.
So can we reach out to the association and let them know, hey, we're gonna stop doing that sidewalk and you're gonna be held responsible to do it unless you wanna give us that easement, I guess would be my question. And if we could do that, we should do it yesterday.
that's what I'd like to do.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah. I don't think anybody on this council would disagree with that we let them know before the snow flies even that, hey, we don't have an easement and we're gonna stop doing that sidewalk.
I have no problem doing the sidewalk. It's not that I don't want to do the sidewalk. It's just kind of a
And I
gray
get
area.
that,
It's
but
not
we
just the
don't,
sidewalk,
we
it's
don't
the
have that
maintenance.
easement,
Right.
Matt, so,
Correct.
I mean, we're pretty much giving him free snow removal on his sidewalk.
Correct.
So I guess what I would do, and council correct me if, I'm wrong, I guess I would go after that easement, and I would let them know, hey, we're gonna stop doing it, unless,
Why do we want the easement? What's our advantage of having that?
well, snow,
Well, we have an easement, there's no complaint that if we damage something. If we don't have the easement and we plow it and something gets damaged, we're gonna hold city liable for it.
Well,
we
that's,
have to repair the
exactly-
sidewalk.
that's with any sidewalk we touch.
But most sidewalks, the city already has the easement. Every house that's built, if there's a sidewalk on it, you have to have that setback for that sidewalk because of the city's easement.
Correct, but what I'm saying is if Bobcat One's going down the sidewalk in front of Johnson's house,
Yeah, to use my
tears
name.
up the sod, regardless if it's a city easement or not, the city's responsible going back and repairing that sod.
But if something else gets damaged, people sue for the stupidest things.
But I mean, if we're not gonna plow it, then why do we want the easement? I mean, right now, it's not, if we just let them take care of it, it saves us money and we don't have to worry about it.
Right, but they might say, nope, we're not gonna take care of it, we'll just give you the easement. Are we gonna say no to that easement?
I don't know, why would we want it if, I mean, can't we just make them take care of it? I mean, it's not ours.
We could, I mean, we
care
could
of
try both approaches. Hey,
I will say that is a busy sidewalk, that the kids do walk that. I think that was the main thing why we started to do it to begin with, is the kids use that as a sidewalk. Main bus stop, corner of Whiskey Road, Nice Sandy Parkway. So the kids do use that sidewalk a lot.
I had a
Yes.
lot of complaints at the beginning of my term about that specific sidewalk, that it wasn't salted or plowed. First, they said it wasn't plowed, and I believe I went to Miss Wood, and she proved that it was plowed. It was just with that crazy winter we had, it wasn't maintained very well because,
I think that's,
So Mayor,
about the-
if I may, we have had people call in too about, because some of the sidewalks along Blossom are not done. We don't have the easements for them, and plus, the city has never plowed those, so some people wonder, why is the city not plowed that part of the sidewalk? We've never done some of those.
we could try both approaches, Councilman Gordon, if that's what you're thinking.
Well, I mean, are you just saying, I mean, you would prefer to just do it and make sure it's done right?
That's what I'm saying.
That's fine with me too.
I say just.
I would rather have the easement and
just
do
do
it and make sure it's done right
Yeah.
for, the community, for the children, or
Yeah,
for joggers, for.
sure.
I
No,
gotta keep
and I-
going,
I-
otherwise
yeah.
you'll give me that line again.
I will add.
For
I will
your
add to
wife when she's walking the dog, type thing.
No, so yeah, I could buy that. Yeah, I mean, if you just want it just so we can do it and make sure it's done right and we don't have to listen to people complain about it, then that's fine with me too.
So I would just give them a nice little letter saying, hey, the city has came to an understanding that we don't have the easement to this property and we're gonna hold you responsible for maintaining it. or you can give the city the easement and we'll maintain it ourselves. See which way they go.
No, is that just the sidewalk or all the mowing too?
It would be just the sidewalk.
Make sure you specify that.
It's just the sidewalk.
Okay. That brings us to the next item, which is snow and ice removal on sidewalks. So Public Works would generally have all the sidewalks cleaned in 48 hours after the snow event is stopped, not to include the weekends and holidays. And last year became an issue with the goofy winter that we had, with the warming and the freezing and all that kind of stuff on the sidewalks, and Public Works had posted doors, that kind of stuff. So looking for some direction on what we do this year with sidewalks that once are cleared after 48 hours, and that goes to the residents to clear their sidewalks, looking for some direction on what we do, so it's not the big issue that it became last year.
Last
So
year was
what's
just-
the policy? We clear in 48 hours and then they take care of it if it blows back in or something, or?
They have to maintain it after the 48 hours.
Oh, I see.
So what we do is we remove the snow, but then
Yep.
they're responsible for maintaining it.
Well, last year was kind of, I don't know if you call it an anomaly, but is that gonna happen every year? I mean, I think everybody did the best they could, including the residents, including the,
Public
you know,
Works?
Public Works, you know? Do you think we need a change just because of last year?
Well, I think we need to decide what we're gonna do. Are we not gonna do anything? If they don't clear it open, is Public Works gonna go back and salt them or sand them, or when they freeze over? I mean, it could be a daily thing with the freezing and melting that we have.
Yeah.
And just looking for some direction into what is considered cleared, what is considered a cleared sidewalk? If it has 4 inches of snow on it, is that cleared? If it has ice that develops overnight and the ice is gone at noon, what's considered cleared?
Well, I
Passable.
think we talked last year about the problem with using the salt is you do get that melt that night where it comes back in and freezes back in, especially with the winter we had last year.
Public Works had a hard time just keeping our sidewalks open last year that we
Yeah.
have.
The banks get so tall and snow melts.
Yeah,
there's
I mean,
puddles,
how do you,
Freezes.
it seems to me like last year, it was a rarity, number one, and number two, we were fighting a battle we couldn't even win. But we were trying our damnedest to
Oh, no, we
do what we
didn't.
could for the residents, and
Going from not doing everybody's sidewalks to what we're doing now,
you're in that seat now, so watch it.
that's huge. I think you make them passable and that's it. That's my opinion. Leave the rest up to homeowners or business owners.
I'm not gonna disagree with that. I agree with
So you're
Councilman
saying if
Collison.
it
Or
looks
else
like
you-
they've made an effort, then good enough, right?
Well, you can't
Basically.
control everything, I agree with you. If they made an effort,
Yeah,
they made an effort.
If
I
they made
mean,
an effort, then if
I
you can
mean,
get by it, then
Right,
We
but
had
I mean,
we went over this over and over and over again last year, and
Oh,
it just couldn't be done. I
no,
mean,
that's what I
you know,
mean, we're fighting a losing battle.
Yeah, so I don't know if we're gonna have the same winter last year, but I suppose we could. You know, I think as long as the effort's there, or what.
Ms. Wood, you wanna add 2 cents here?
Mayor, I would like to add something in, perhaps maybe, because some residents, I would say, got really stressed out when they got notified last year about that they needed to be, what city code says about them doing anything beyond when Public Works has cleared it, 48 hours after the snowfall. Perhaps maybe we look at it more complaint-based, because there are times when we get notified and there's like a skating rink of 50, 60 feet. Well, that is a concern, that we could go out, Public Works could address it, especially on those trails, the paved trails. And then the other instances, people are doing as best they can. I don't think it's realistic to have people out there with chisels, with salt, which is damaging their grass, damaging our concrete of our sidewalks too, over and over and over when you have the freeze thaw, freeze thaw, freeze thaw. So maybe we look at it, if it's complaint-based, that Public Works takes a look at it and see what we can do for on those extreme cases. Like
I
we
would
had
agree
it-
with that.
We had one complaint, was by the bus stop of Whiskey and Iceni Parkway. Yeah, I sent Public Works, I'll go out and address that, because kids are out there.
Yeah.
They're standing, and it was in a very long sheet of ice that they went out and addressed. But to make that at that locations, the associations, that's very difficult for just a couple people to go out and address, I think.
My only concern was the apartment buildings off of Whiskey and somebody knows the road.
Oakland?
Chief, you should spit this out.
Is it Oakland?
is it Oakwood, right
By the
outside the
school?
middle school? Yeah.
Oakwood.
So the middle school sits there, then, is that Oakwood that runs the whiskey?
Yep.
That apartment complex never touched their sidewalks. I watch kids daily fall on their hind ends walking that sidewalk. So, I mean, are we gonna send Public Works out there for that too? I mean, that
Well,
would
maybe that's where
work.
Public Works goes out and looks at it, and that is, maybe in those cases, it's in front of like a large complex, or it's a business or something like that, where we notify them, hey, we did get a complaint, we do need you to address the sidewalk outside of adjacent to your property.
Or we can do it for the small fee out. No.
And then if we're gonna start to salt sidewalks on a complaint basis, you're not gonna wanna put the road salt on there.
No.
It'll
Maybe
destroy
we
the
put sand.
I lean towards the sand, yeah.
sand, or you'd get,
I think
there's a salt or chemical you can put down that's safe for the cement.
but we would have grass kill, which could be extensive, and then that's just more work for Public Works in the
Yeah.
spring, and residents aren't happy either, because their lawn was really nice, and.
I have faith in Public Works that they'll know what to do.
We'll go
So,
with the complaint driven then. We'll address them as complaints come in.
yeah.
Okay.
And you guys just use your good judgment. and-
Yeah,
I
I
know
have
what you're
faith in
looking
you
at,
and your
thinking.
fellows there that you'll know what to do.
Okay, fair enough. That brings me to the last item here on my sheet, and it says storage, I have a typo there, it's actually shortage, salt delivery shortage. And I just want council to know that in years past, we place our salt what we want in the spring of the year, and then generally we can 20% over that salt, so if we order 100 tons, so to say, we get 120 ton of salt. This year, that's not an option. So, don't know what the winter is gonna be like, and the only way to spread my salt out, if I start to run low on salt, is to put more sand down in the salt. So I just want council to be aware that I can't go over the 20% this year of what we have for us, reserved for us. And it's not that there's a salt shortage, so to say. It's not a salt shortage, it's that they can't get the salt here from Louisiana to Duluth. So it's a salt delivery shortage from, say, Louisiana to the barge up to Duluth. So I just want council to be aware of that, not knowing what the winter is gonna be like, but the roads potentially could look different just because if I have to stretch the salt out that I have, I may have to put more salt sand down. Not
Are we
that I
still
want to.
using like beet juice and sand mixture too?
Yep. We
So
put beet
what would
juice
happen
down.
if we use more than that once?
The beet juice, we use the beet juice because the beet juice.
What I'm saying, Matt, is if we had like, you started to panic over a salt shortage, say that 5 times fast you can. A salt can't even get
Salt
it out
shortage.
once. Thank you. You know, you started to panic over that, then you just use more beet juice sand mixture, substitute until you got the salt. Would that be feasible or no?
Well, the reason why we use beet juice, one, beet juice works at a colder temperature, and the beet juice works at night where straight salt doesn't work at night.
Okay.
So those are the real reasons why the beet juice comes into play. Okay, we pre-treat with the calcium, we use the calcium chloride too, and what that does is that when you use that, it doesn't allow the salt to really bounce all over the road, so it allows the salt to stay down the center of the road and work its way out. So there's 2 reasons why we put the chemicals down. We do pre-treat with the calcium chloride when some beet juice mixed in with that too, but it's, it's before the snowfall comes into play. But to really stretch what salt I have out, it's really use less salt by adding salt sand to it. Might not even come into play, don't know. I just want to inform council that, hey, just so you know, as this winter progresses, things might look a little bit different because of that. Not knowing if it'll come into play or not, I just want to make council aware of it.
Fair enough. Anything else you got, Mr. Sylvester, or are we
That's-
good on your end?
We're good there.
All right, moving on to D12, the IPD mission statement. Chief Myers.
Mayor and council, if you remember, other than Council Gordon, back on May 20th, we reached out to my 3 goals that I had coming into the police department. So this item here is one of those goals, actually one of the top goals. Wanted to wait till we got a lieutenant in place. Reached out, want to make this a collaborative effort between myself and my staff as far as our mission statement. Mission statement is something that's written on a piece of paper. However, it's the application that's going to make the difference. And I wanted all the staff to be on board with, they gave me their recommendations, we crafted this together, so that every decision, our big decisions in their department, our small decisions when our officers are out taking a call, can all relate back to that mission statement.
Are you happy with this, chief?
Well, I'm happy with it, but I do want council to take a look at it and open for recommendation, because I want just as much buy-in from the council on the overall mission that we're trying to accomplish with the police department. The highlights on that mission statement is the quality of life piece. One of the biggest goals I instill on all the officers and employees is everything we're doing is to enhance the quality of life for all citizens in the city of Isani.
Kind of off the topic, but I've gotten a number of complaints. How come our police cars don't say "In God We Trust"?
Well, from what I understand, the only entities that are really adopting that are the sheriff's entities, because they're an elected official, and I'm assuming because there's less, they're the ones that can make the decision. If nobody likes it, they can not elect them.
Okay.
So it's a decision that, you know, a council could make, but it's a mostly elected official decision, because there's people that are for and against.
I don't know. I like the way our police cars look right now, so.
So anyway, the biggest thing on this is it's not just, ironically, if we asked, we had one of our department meetings a week ago or so, and I asked, so what is our mission statement? Nobody knows. That's not a mission statement. That's just something written somewhere. The only people that actually know what our mission statement is right now are the people that we interview and ask them, what do you know about the city of Isani? And they read it on the website on their way into their interview. Good for them. It doesn't fulfill the actual meaning of our mission statement, but basically it's the overall driving force that's going to base on the way that we handle every situation, whether it's big or small. And it boils down to the 3 core values, which are the mission statement: the respect, integrity, and professionalism. So take a look at it. If you have any recommendations, we're open to that. If you like it, you will see that. We are going to use that as a branding tool for our mission of our goal for the department, as far as the quality of life piece and those 3 core values. We also added a vision statement. Vision is what we're looking forward. Where are we trying to achieve as the police department? I wanted to add that first line of that, which was department whose employees feel valued. Again, we can't have a mission statement, goals, and all this stuff if our employees don't feel valued, because our employees are the ones that are actually out there and doing the day-to-day work that have to instill those quality of life pieces. And then we want to create a model of excellence. We all have goals as far as our department to make it the best department that we have. Other people see that. So that's where our vision of our department is going. By putting it down on paper, gives us all a guideline to go by, myself, leading the department, you as council that are approving things, as well as the officers that are actually out there doing the day-to-day work. So it's kind of, it's a piece of paper, it is a big deal, and we're all taking a very serious approach to that.
I like it,
Looks good to me.
and I think if the chief's happy with it, that makes me even more like it, so. Anybody got anything else to add to that?
I'd like to see, is there possible for the mission and the core values to be printed on the backside of your guys' business cards?
Absolutely, that was already one of our ideas, as well as.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, there'll be some branding pieces with that, yes.
One thing at a time there, Councilman Collison. We
asked
gotta
me,
pass
so I
that
said.
first.
I'm
I like
good with
it.
Yeah,
I like it.
that's good.
I think it's good. I think it's, you could actually memorize that and keep it in mind, you know what I mean? It's not, it's what you need to say and nothing more.
And it will be, I can tell you, if in the next few weeks, if you see one of our officers and if you ask them what it is, they better know it. If not, let me know.
Question is, you better
They owe
bring a
us
piece
an
of
ice
paper
cream?
with you so you remember it.
Yeah.
They'll be digging out the piece of card, or we'll be,
And more important than knowing it.
Yep, you're
learning and
right.
Following it.
Yeah.
So if they don't know it, they gotta buy us an ice cream?
Yes.
sweet.
Ice cream.
Or give us a baseball card? Do they do that anymore?
No, not anymore. Every once in a while, that's usually put out by one of the associations from the state, so, yeah.
I'm talking about airline tickets to Hawaii.
Oh,
Some
wow.
Milwaukee.
I was thinking lunch at Creamery, but
Actually, I think it'd be neater to have baseball cards with our officers on them.
should buy us a
Yeah,
pizza
some
from
agencies
Jimmy's.
do that, and that is,
Yeah,
Chicken.
I've seen that done.
Yep.
Chicken,
So the
there you
kids
go.
in the community really get to know their
Lasagna.
officers.
yep.
And it's not, actually not that expensive.
No, it's not, something
I'm
that
hungry.
we do have next year we
Jimmy's
have
gonna
our
make you a chicken
community
between
engagement
now and the next
budget,
council
which we
meeting.
haven't had before.
Right,
So those
Jimmy?
are pieces
Oh,
that are going to the
we're
community
not gonna
engagement
make
side of it.
council meeting.
Yeah. I don't remember what department I saw on that, but I thought, oh, that's really cool.
Okay, we gotta
Just
keep
a-
going.
you know,
We gotta keep
really
going.
neat.
Chief, you got the next one too, D13, the open burning permit discussion, if you wanna just keep going?
Sure. Council approached me just on this issue as far as the open burning permit. Just so we're all clear, what open burning is you have the 3x3 recreational fire. There's actually the definition in the back of what it is. That's not included. You don't need a DNR permit or a city permit to have recreational fire, whether it's in a contained, some people have the chimneys or whatnot in their front yards, or a recreational fire. This is the actual open burning, whether it's a running fire, meaning you're letting the grass burn, or a brush pile per se. So the city by code requires them to obtain this permit. Now, they already have to obtain the DNR permit, which is a $5 fee. So we're looking into that a little bit. Right now, under our permitting status, they are charged a $40 application fee. They require the chief's approval to make sure there's no public safety entities, because you can go to the DNR right now and get a open burning permit for a brush pile, and then you could have a 50 by 50 brush pile behind your house on Dogwood, right? They don't look at the safety aspects, so that's what this level, it's not necessarily, a generator, it's for us to make sure that what they're doing is not unsafe. It requires council approval. And,
I don't think that's necessary.
yeah, so the changes are, is looking for input on this item. I mean, my thought process, we've had some come up. For example, the school was looking to do like a bonfire, but the timing to get it to go to council and everything else, we had no way of approving that bonfire for their event because of the time factor for council.
I don't think a council approval should be necessary.
I think if the fire chief and the police chief think everything's good, I don't think it needs to come to me, for me
Well,
to say yea or nay.
I
Since you
agree.
mentioned that, I did talk to Al today, because if you look at our permit right now, you have the applicant signature, property owner, and police chief, and I asked Al specifically if he would mind being, as long as we can go through it without the council approval, if he'd mind being another layer in that, and he said he'd be on board with being another layer on that.
I'm
Awesome.
fine with that.
Well, I'm good with that too.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. As long as they go through you
What do-
and the police chief or the fire chief, and if both you feel that it's not a harm to anything, if something, whatever, I'm all for it.
Do we really need that fee though? A $40 fee, what's the fee for?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of high, but.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers that we actually get come through are very few, and even the numbers that would come through, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, maybe we could either do away with it or lower it to a $10 fee?
Well, and I didn't do the research when I talked to Al about it, about the whole fee thing. This has to be an administrative time thing. It can't be actually, it's an application fee. The permit can't, that's why it's a non-refundable.
Right, we're doing away with all that though. It's you and the
Yeah.
fire chief now.
Right. So, as far as the taxing or burden on staff, which would be myself, it's not gonna cost $40 in cities.
Time,
economics,
manpower.
Yeah.
I'd say do away with the fee, but if they get caught doing it without the application, then they can be fined.
Darn right.
Which is already in code.
Yep,
Perfect.
perfect.
Everybody in agreeance on that one? All right, let's move on to the council chamber wall discussion. I
gonna be
brought this
Mayor
up
Johnson.
because, as you can see, the wall behind us is bare with only one flag. What the plan was to take that, what do we call it, the latex? No, it's not latex.
The
It's
decal.
Vinyl decal on this back wall. The way we were gonna do the flags isn't gonna work. So we shifted gears. I had a whole room of staff in here, and we all came up with an idea of putting them on flag poles with a nice gold
Emblem
ball
on
on the top of it, and just set them, kind of one here, one there. The flags would surround us up here still. You'd have the decal in the background. It would look pretty awesome. The only thing that I wasn't going to pull the trigger on, because I want to keep your guys' trust, is it would be $245.99 over my $500 budget. So with a total cost of $749.99, I can make the vision happen. But I wasn't going to make that vision happen without your guys' agreeance and approval.
I'm saying go ahead with it. I think beautify the city, make the city chambers look a little better. Now that everything's being recorded, more video, let's get it done.
I think
I'd
it'd
say
make,
though, I would take the American flag and can you do an eagle on top instead of a gold ball?
it would cost us more,
Like how much more?
like a lot more. They're crazy expensive.
Is that right?
Yeah, we looked and when Josie told me that price, I said, I think we could go.
Jenny, I think think Jenny grabbed the price on the. I'm not
Yeah,
sure what the
which
Eagle
was
price
a huge difference.
Is it polished brass, or, I mean,
Yeah, that's what we do. We do like a polished brass ball with a nice flag.
I mean, what was the eagle made out of? It was that much more.
I think it was gold plated. That's why.
You can't buy a brass eagle?
No.
You
It wouldn't
might be
be
able to.
proper
I don't
flag
know.
adequacy.
So I can,
I'm not a brass
Mayor,
man.
Mayor, Council, if I may, so the cost per brass for rule, I'm gonna say ball, brass ball, is $44.10 each. We can look to see if we could find one, we would like one with an eagle potentially for the US flag. We could look to see how close it is. I'm not sure, I did not pull the number.
Do you recall, Matt?
I don't know if she pulled the number on the Eagle either, but that was the cheapest brass ball she could find. There wasn't anything else she could find.
So, I mean, what we're potentially doing is, you know, it would have a nice stand on it, nice flag pole with the brass ball on top of it, and then you'd have your flag. So we'd still have the U.S. cities, state, and POW flag up here that would
Okay.
surround us with our decal right here.
I guess I'd like to, can you check on, or whoever check on the eagle?
And if it's not
If it's
too
a-
expensive,
yeah.
you want to go with the eagle on the
Well,
U.S.
that'd be
flag?
my recommendation, but if it's crazy expensive, I agree, let's.
But let's not rehash this anymore.
Yeah.
What's the dollar amount you want to put on it? If the Eagle's $85, you want to go with the Eagle?
I would vote on $85, I'd vote yes.
Not over 100 though.
Well, okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Not over $100.
So we can't go over $100 on the eagle.
Councilman Carlson?
You okay with that?
I guess.
I'm okay with the brass ball, to be honest with you, but,
I think the American flag needs to stand out a little different.
Yeah, that's
than the
what,
rest of
that's
them.
why.
and I see what he's saying. So if we want an eagle on it, then so be it. Let's not go over $100 though.
So it'd be $100 on the one Eagle and then 3 brass balls, right?
Correct.
I thought two. Oh, do we have 3 flags up there?
Well, 4.
Or, oh, okay.
All right.
Okay.
Palomino Road signage discussion.
Okay, so in the past, staff has received complaints on the Palomino Road sidewalk being used as a trail for the snowmobiles, per city code that's prohibited. Staff would like direction on whether there needs to be sign placed on Palomino Road restricting that, what the sign would say. Would it be no motorized vehicles? Would it be no snowmobiles? If we put a sign there, looking for some direction.
I'd say no motorized vehicles and no snowmobiles. Make it both. Motorized vehicles, they could say a snowmobile isn't a vehicle.
I did reach out to Wayne in the snowmobile club. He's looking for a path to potentially do for the snowmobiles, but I'm all on board for signage in Palomino.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, that one was the easy one. No parking sign discussion. Matt, you might as well stay at the plate, sir.
Absolutely.
I'll back you on this one.
Thanks, Jason. So, no parking
Jason, you can
signs
feed in too, Jason.
No parking signs on 9th Avenue by the Intermediate School, or on both sides of the road on 9th Avenue. And then on the west side, they actually go to the First City lot on the west side of the road. On Centennial, there's no parking signs on the west side of Centennial. Looking at, do we take those signs there, pull those signs out? If we pull those signs out, it should be known that there's now houses on 8th Avenue from Whiskey Road, or from Heritage, I'm sorry, going past 9th Avenue. Staff would like to put no parking signs there on 8th Avenue, past 9th Avenue where the lines stop. They can't park on the road there already because that enters into a turning lane, but putting no parking signs would solidify the fact they can't park there.
This came first as a complaint to me by a resident, and I kind of hemmed and hawed about it until the administrators of the school board came to me, and they asked me that they thought it was a little overzealous. So Matt and I actually took a day last week, Wednesday, in my office hours, and we drove around for almost an hour, and we looked at all these signs, and not a darn bit of it made sense to me. A resident told me flat out that it was somebody was self-absorbed. I'm sure we could think of who that was.
Yep.
And that's why they were put there. Somebody has made, I think it was Miss Wood, made a good gripe that there was somewhere that you said that if we opened it up for bus lineup, that they would start doing it again. That was a good argument.
So I believe when this was brought up in the past, that there were 2 reasons of why, speaking of the Centennial one only, I don't really remember any discussion about how it occurred over on 8th Avenue, so I can't speak to that. But on Centennial, so there were buses that were stacking along the road instead of utilizing their parking lot was one of it. The other one was if cars were parked and lined up along that side and the other side, so on the west and east side, kids walking in between the cars from the west side going to the east was more dangerous because you couldn't see the kids coming because vehicles could be in your light of sight, but the kids walking in between that are smaller. So that was another concern that was of why those signs were placed.
But the buses have been utilizing their parking lot since then. I mean, you're kind of in fear if we remove those parking signs, the buses will line up there again versus using the parking lot?
Well, I think that if we want to allow the buses to do that, that's one thing. From my perspective, I think the safety of the kids walking in between is worse than the buses, but.
Well, I think removing the no parking signs and informing the school that buses can't park there, plain and simple. They shouldn't be parked there.
Is there nowhere else for the kids to walk over there? I mean, they're directed during the day. You go down there and, they got the flag guards and all that type of stuff.
My only gripe was this, Councilman Burgley, was there's no parking signs on the most safest spot. And I'm thinking of the future of my daughter and the future of these residents in this city. That would be the safest spot for them to park and pick up their child, and the safest spot for them to get in, pick up their kid, and get out. That was my look at it.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, can the kids, why are they going between each car? Is there no way to say,
Because
we
they
all
line up
cross
on-
right, we all cross right here,
Why are
not
they
you
bike
choose,
down
you choose
Whiskey
your.
Road when
What's
there's a
that?
sidewalk on both sides?
They're kids.
They're kids.
No, I get that, but they can't be, I'm just saying, can't they be directed? I mean, they're directed to get
That
on.
require more volunteers.
You can direct,
Crossing
you can
guards.
direct everybody you want. As soon as you walk away from there, they're saying, I don't have to listen to you, goodbye, and walk
Right.
away. What are you gonna do?
They're kids.
They're kids.
Well, I get their
I mean-
kids, I'm just wondering, I mean, if it's impossible, it's
I'm
possible, I'm just
rehashing
asking the
this.
question,
I'll be
that's all I'm
real.
doing.
This was
I would think it'd be impossible.
Okay, well, then that's the answer, so.
I mean,
Well,
they're
Councilmember
kids.
Burgley, I think the reason why they're walking in between cars from the west side going over to the east side is because we've allowed parking on the east side.
Yeah.
So if just say hypothetically, we only allowed them to park on the west side, you wouldn't have kids crossing the street as much, maybe if they were walking home that way or whatever, but you wouldn't have them walking in between cars to get to the other side where parked cars. I do think we should ask engineering from his perspective, because he did look out there too and looking at the width of the street.
I
If we
guess.
could.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so I did go evaluate the width on Centennial and on Ninth. So Centennial was 32 feet wide, which technically isn't quite wide enough for parking on both sides and still allowing two-way traffic. So if the concern is that during these peak pickup times and maybe sporting events, there actually is cars lining both sides of the street, then the street would be too constricted for two-way traffic. That's the benefit of having the no parking on one side. It's
What
the
if,
same
what if we
case-
switched it?
So if we switched it, I guess then we're kind of negating where that stopping the buses from stacking would occur.
I think you'd have more parents pulling up there picking their children up than buses.
Well, the buses are gonna stack if they have to. But that's up to the school district to say, no more parking there. Don't stack the buses. Plain and simple.
So we make this a school board issue, then, we pass it off as.
It isn't even a school board issue. It's up to the principal of the school to tell the buses that they can't park there.
The city put the signs there, so at this moment, it's a city issue.
We've hashed this thing 14 times.
I mean, can't we just make it a pickup, no parking, but child pickup area? I mean, where they can go and they can park there while they're picking their children up, but it's still a no parking zone the rest of the time.
No parking pickup zone only?
Yeah.
Child
Child pickup?
Kid pickup zone or whatever the heck it's called. I've seen.
Is that
something like
feasible?
that.
Or just post no bus parking.
Maybe what we should do is send this back to the staff and throw around some more ideas. of what you've heard the council say.
If we put no parking on, or times on there, then you're allowing parking on both sides of the road other times, correct? And then it's too narrow for parking on both sides.
Well, I guess the only other piece here is, on these two stretches, Centennial and Ninth, there isn't any striping. And so if you compare it to the rest of all of our residential streets, they're this narrow or narrower in most cases, and we don't have no parking restrictions. It's just, there isn't consistent, solid parked cars on both sides of the roads where it actually is constrained to the point where you can't have two-way traffic. If in these locations, you know, you notify the bus company or whatever that they aren't supposed to queue there, and there isn't a concern that there's gonna be parked cars on both sides, you know, constricting traffic for the whole run, I guess then it doesn't really need to be treated differently than the rest of the residential streets. It's just in these locations, they're being treated more like a commercial street with parking as opposed to all of our residential streets that have no striping, and there's just the understanding that you're gonna allow parking where it occurs and vehicles just have to navigate. It's once there's a row of cars on both sides that now you're so constricted for the whole run that you can't just take turns because now you're stuck. So that's the only concern on both stretches actually, is if the concern is there's gonna be solid cars parked on both sides during events, during pickup, those would be the times that it's just too narrow for that to occur. Because if one car's already 3/4 of the way down that road and somebody else is coming at them, they can't get by each other.
Again, I think we should throw this back to the staff and have them do a little more homework.
I
But just
agree.
listening to you talk, I wonder, you know, and I guess I'd have to go look over it myself. I'm not familiar with that area very much. Could you do a one-way street? And
How about we throw it back to the staff
Well, I'm just
and
wondering
have
what
them
idea-
do